Hey everybody, Casmo here, and today I'm with Sven from Polychop. How you doing, Sven?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing? And yeah, welcome to another podcast here, I would say.
Yeah, we'll do a little discussion and talk about the Kiowa. So, obviously, yesterday the ED 2021 and beyond release video was put out and got some neat graphics and stuff. But of course, the Apache was unveiled as the next module, and so that's pretty exciting. I think you and I both agree it's probably much further down the road than some may think. But you and I had already discussed having this conversation probably about a week ago, so we didn't even know that release was coming out. So that is not the purpose of this conversation. But really, what I wanted to do is have you on because as we are here closing out 2020, thank God, um, the Kiowa is still not released, understandably so. But I wanted to kind of talk to you about it and just let people out there know what's going on. So I'll start with the obvious question that I know you're not going to answer, but everyone would crucify me if I didn't ask you, which is when is the Kiowa going to be released?
Okay, as you already mentioned it, it's not going to be a definite answer in any way
Right.
at the moment. When will it release? So the very straight up and honest answer to this is we don't know really at this current moment because we're doing certain stuff that is very important for the flat model. And so I would say the general answer would be like we had for 2020. So we'd say 2021. And there's a very specific reason behind it why we chose to not give a specific date at all. Even if we have it already now or not, it doesn't matter. The answer would be 2021 because we want to have a certain freedom inside of the time frame to deliver the project as it should be delivered in our perspective. And as well, the same thing as people ask me, hey, is it already at Bell's desk and all that? We're not going to say anything about is it there at Bell's Q&A process or not, because we don't want to interrupt that kind of process from the outside, from media or whatever.
Sure.
So my personal perspective on that is once it has been at Bell's desk and it's reviewed and they gave the thumbs up, we will make an announcement on that part. And once that announcement is out, expect a release in a certain short time frame afterwards. Because then it depends on ED to get everything into the ED ecosystem properly. Because right now we're producing outside of the ED ecosystem, kind of, not really, but kind of. It's not
Yeah.
integrated into the integrity check and all that. So that's another process that will take some time. And once that is done, ED and I, we can actually say, okay, this is a good day. Push the button, make it a green button, and release it in the shop and all that. So that's why I would say it's fair to say 2021, and not raise any false expectations to anyone. So
Sure. And your intention is still that it is a fully completed module. It's not going into some sort of early release type situation where it's half done, half baked.
no, we want to have so on that regard, we have made it call internally, and we said, okay, how many systems? Because many people will measure
Yeah.
the release candidate on its entire system complete part.
Right.
We said, okay, how many systems of the aircraft would actually make it operationally completely ready?
Right.
And that was like, okay, we set all the stuff that's around the systems in terms of weapons and sensors and all that,
Yeah.
countermeasures and all this stuff that is actually important for the aircraft to be operational as it should be. That's
Right.
our margin of being, okay, this is feature complete. We
Yeah.
still see stuff like we've seen stuff like for example maintenance pages and all that. We were like, hey, are we going to go into that depths of
Yeah.
detail? No, it's not needed because there is no
Yeah.
functionality, there is no engine history as such, and there's so many things in DCS that are not existing in that actually exist in real life that are not existing in DCS. So we
Sure.
had to make a cut here, and we said, okay, and we will make a statement on that. We'll be reviewed by Bell, or what has been reviewed by Bell, what we consider being a candidate for release, and our statement is still true. We want to get the candidate as polished as possible, because what we figured was, in the end, when you look at all the change logs of products that are in the DCS ecosystem, um, in our opinion, putting out the time and before release and doing these micro detail changes, for example, as you and Barundos, you talked about, for example, the target list in the target locate process, which we didn't know. These are details that we want to fix before, for example, because when we look at the change logs, there's always some stuff inside of of any module that has changed in the course of the beta status, I would say.
Sure.
And we want to avoid that kind of, because in the end it also causes not trouble, but it brings us to the point that we have to go back and back and back again
Yeah.
on each update, once we have not made these finish lines of being okay in the state of,
Mm,
this is the red line where we want to have it, where it has to be, because then it's just not needed to update the systems because there's some sort of new knowledge coming up.
yeah.
We only have to then maintain the bug fixes and be like, okay, there's a bug that comes by, whatever it is, something changed in DCS. Okay, we can address this bug and pay attention to it. And it is less workload on the module after release than we would have to if we would put it out with a certain, I would say, half bake or whatever term you want to use, status.
Yeah.
So, and we can invest more time into features that we still want to add, because the release candidate is going to be a certain version of what we envision, but it doesn't mean that it will end. We still have some visions for this aircraft, what we want to add on top later on in the process of the maintenance of bugs, introduce some new features here and there that have been on our mind. May it be some certain FARP stuffs or certain devices that are used by the real pilots, but they're not necessarily needed for the aircraft operation. So
Right.
stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I think you got the right idea. Because there are a lot of systems in the Kiowa that, even I, when flying them, I didn't need to go necessarily to certain pages, within the system. If you're a maintenance test pilot, then sure, you're going to spend more time on certain pages than others. But if you look at it in terms of what do I need to play and have fun in DCS and be, quasi realistic, yeah, you could probably pare those systems down quite a bit. And I think the number one thing for me that I'm excited about to have the Kiowa and eventually the Apache, because they'll have the same capability, is having a laser, on a helicopter that I can then laze for, a great percentage of the aircraft that the fixed wing aircraft that are already in DCS. So yeah, if you look at it in terms of, okay, can I shoot all the weapons the way they're supposed to be shot? Can I, I know we can already drop smoke grenades, which is a great Kiowa thing. Can I use the laser? Can I use the sight? Can I navigate? And can I talk on the radio? I mean, that's the majority of the fight right there.
Yeah, sure. And then comes on top stuff like multi-crew, for example.
Yeah,
As I said internally, and to you guys SMEs, and to Patrick and I, and we all agreed on, hey, we're not going to reveal anything about multi-crew because I've seen the question. But these are things that are important for me, for example, as
yeah,
you just said. And yeah, I mean, some people have different expectations, probably. And I figured and I realized over the years, you cannot match everybody's experience, or
no,
actually
not
expectations, not experience, but
expectations. No.
expectations. Yeah. So it's
No,
important.
absolutely. I learned that my first when I was teaching the very first class I had, and I realized I can't reach all of these guys. But if you spend all your time chasing the ones who just aren't going to be happy, you're leaving behind all the ones who will. So I think a predominant number of people are going to recognize, um, you know, that you're trying to get feature complete to you is functional within the realm of DCS. So
Yeah, and then on
um,
top, we still have the Gazelle where we said we want to update the flight model. So the less work we have to do after release with the Kiowa and updating systems and their features, the more freedom and time we have for working on the Gazelle flight model, for example,
yeah,
or already start to investigate new aircrafts and do research. Because I would say out of the actual creation of a module, um, I would say 50% of the time is research and learning the systems and learning how this. thing works. So that needs a lot of
Yeah.
time as well. So
Yeah, there's a lot to it, and I don't think people fully understand. And I certainly didn't understand the things that you have to go through from a development standpoint. But you know, the Kiowa, the Apache, all these kind of aircraft, there's a lot going on under the hood that you're trying to model, and it all talks to each other, right? I mean, it's all interconnected, and then on top of that, creating a flight model, which you know I have said since the dawn of time that we're trying to replicate helicopters in simulation is incredibly difficult. Flight modeling is very hard, and I've I've certainly helped out as I can, and we've had these back and forth like, well, this doesn't feel right, yeah, but that's what the book says. Yeah, I know, but that's not what that's not what it feels like. And so
mm,
trying to find that happy medium between something that the developer can take and use as a baseline, because you can't take feeling, right? I mean, you can't just say, oh, well, so and so said it feels this way, so let me just model that. You got to go off some sort of numbers system, and that's what you guys are doing with the flight model.
yeah,
um,
true.
so let's talk about the flight model, because call it what it is. The Gazelle did get a lot of heat for the flight model, and that's fine. But where are we at with the flight model on the Kiowa? What are some challenges that you're still facing, and just kind of your thoughts on that right now?
So flight model, actually, I would say we're right now in the process and fixing the last major things of it.
Mm,
In terms of what means major things, everything that you can imagine of the physics of a helicopter, when you take a book of helicopter dynamics, is in that flight model. There's not a single part that it's missing. You can name any effect, it's there. And right now, what we do is we're actually fine tuning some stuff that we have not been able to find earlier, unfortunately, in the creation of the Kiowa, um, in terms of attitude, for example. So right
mhm,
now, what we do is we have integrated into the system already the complete performance charts. So as you remember, as a Kiowa pilot, you could ask the aircraft for your hover performance power and your cruise performance power. So these pages are working.
right.
Um, and Barundas has seen it already and marked out that there's a little detail that we have to change. So the aircraft can calculate for you in real time what kind of power settings you will have. So this is what we did, and we actually fine-tuned now certain parts of the flight model the past weeks to match, for example, hover performance. It will match all the performance charts and all the performance powers you have available in this aircraft in all altitudes and possible temperatures that the DCS software can give you. So that's
Mm,
from the minimum is minus 12 degrees Celsius to up to 50 degrees. So that's the range that ED gives you. We checked it out on all the maps. Like, what is the lowest number the ECS can give us? Okay, cool. Then we double checked, and altitude is the right altitude temperature there, and so on and so on. So we went through all that, and while we did that, there came a topic up, for example, that we had earlier. As you know, there was some issue in the dive where it lost some certain lift, and we were trying to figure
yeah.
why it did that. And so we figured this must be connected to some sort of an attitude problem. So the
Yeah.
aircraft has a certain attitude. So we double checked that. We went into back into the books, and as you know, I double checked with the Croatian guys that I'm in contact with. I double checked with you and Barundas, and came up with the solution that this had to do with the attitude that the aircraft had. But as you've known and seen in the process, what kind of information we have available, we did
Yeah.
not know certain attitudes that the aircraft had at certain stages of speed. So that's what we fixed right now already
Mm,
for a certain degree in terms of temperature and altitude and weight for configurations for the aircraft. And we're right now in the process of finishing that whole part during the next days, weeks. And we had to figure a way to make it more convenient in our workflow as well, because I said, hey Patrick, these mean just for the attitude change, this means we have to change and correct and check out if corrections are needed, but we have to check over 4,000 values just for the
mm,
attitude.
right.
Is there a way how we can do something that is more convenient? And then we double checked, and we had to check in the code, like, going back forth, and be like, okay, is there a solution? Yes, there was a solution that we found. To not have us work for 4 weeks, 6 weeks just for an attitude change and lose more time, because we also have the aim to release it. But we figured, now having done the test last week, the first test, on that attitude change, I flew the aircraft and I figured the other issue that we were facing earlier that we talked about internally in the team, as you remember, that is pretty much gone. So
Yeah.
that was a good benefit of doing that and being like, okay. So flight model, I would say, I expect it as soon we have this new stuff that we're working on right now. I would say in 2 weeks or roughly maybe 3 weeks, everything ironed out. We can hand the stuff to you guys, have you guys test fly, and go into the super micro details. Because I think at that point, the flight model is actually by, I would say, 95 to 98% finished in its details.
So,
So,
so if I can, just to for listeners, first I want to kind of summarize what we're talking about, and then if it's all right with you, I'll kind of describe the
mhm,
process from our end as the testers. So, what we're talking about with the attitude, of course, is the attitude of the aircraft as it looks. So guys like Brundis and I, who actually flew Kiowas, um, we're very used to seeing a certain attitude of the aircraft at certain airspeeds, and particularly when an aircraft where you don't have a heads up display where you're kind of looking down in the screen, that becomes very important, and that is how you fly, especially at low altitudes. You're just very used to that. And so essentially what we're saying is, you guys are building the system based on, again, the numbers, and then we were jumping in and seeing like, okay, I'm holding what looks like a 60 knot attitude, but I'm actually going 90 knots, or I can't remember what the issue was. And then, of
yeah,
course, as you said, it manifests itself in a dive, and that's where I kind of picked up on it. I was like, okay, the aircraft is shooting in such a way that it feels like it's at this attitude, but I'm actually flying this attitude. And once I adjusted my sight picture and said, okay, I know this is wrong for me, but this is what the aircraft thinks. And then I was putting rockets, pretty much right where I wanted them. Um, and so to kind of dig into the flight testing for guys who are interested in this and how this works. So Sven and his team builds what they think is okay. This is the current package. This is what the numbers are telling us, and then they hand it off to Brundis and I and some other people, and then we kind of play around with it, and then we have access to able to I know we were doing this with the hover, adjusting. I don't remember what we were adjusting exactly. I think it was
the
the
curve,
input for the collective. Yeah, the curve
yeah,
essentially for the
from the
collective.
transition hover to forward flight. Mm.
Yeah, and so we're sitting there literally changing that by like a 0.1%, or some crazy minute number, and we're just constantly taking off, constantly hovering, and then adjusting those numbers and saying, okay, this feels like what it should be. Before that it was climbing way too high, or too fast. All right, this time it's not coming off the ground the way it should. And so I want to share that with people, because I want people to understand that if they get hung up on the flight model and why things are taking so long, that's because there really is an effort to make this feel right. And you do have access to some guys who can at least tell you that, yeah, okay, I know the numbers say X, but we're saying Y, and then trying to find that happy medium. So you talking about the performance charts and all that stuff. Is that stuff going to be available? Like, is there going to be sort of documentation that comes with those performance planning charts at all?
Well, my plan is for the release. You mean, or
Yeah,
for the release, I plan to write the flight or actually a Polychop Simulation flight model, flight manual for the Zachar for the release, as we have to anyways.
yeah,
And yeah, these performance charts in general, they're no secret. I mean, you can find
yeah,
them in the leaked 1999 manual. The performance, I think, has not changed, same
yeah.
engine, so that is all there already, publicly available for people that actually chase down some manuals where I was like, okay, cool, have fun. But so that's going to be definitely available in our manual that we want or have to create for the release as well. But I started on it on the manual, but I know already what will be in there, and so chapter wise what we will do and how this is going to be structured. Yeah,
Okay,
this is going to be available too. So yeah, you can
okay.
double check then later on if you want to, as a gamer or as a player. You can double check. You can go into the charts, look in the papers, and actually go in there and be like, okay, I want to have 5,100 pounds at this and this fat, and basically free at temperature,
Mhm.
and at this and this altitude. Cool. Put it in there, and you should see the exact same numbers being spit out inside of your performance page, inside of the helicopter, as you can read from the charts.
Well, speaking of that, so and you kind of hinted at this earlier. We were talking what else is going to come. So the Kiowa, when it gets released, is it coming with anything else? Is it coming with training missions, a campaign? There's some FARP modeling that I showed off a while back.
Yeah, so basically the plan right now is there's some mandatory stuff that we have to bring with the Kiowa. So there will be
Mhm.
I would say, small series of small training missions, so
Okay.
that the person who's not able to watch or doesn't want to watch YouTube videos or anything like that, or wants to jump here and there and who
Yeah.
wants to do most of it by himself, that they have a very first basic ability of using the system. For example, startup, that's going to be some mission. And as I remember, or actually every module has that, very few
Yeah.
training missions. And we don't plan to go into this super duper super deep training missions in terms of you learn how to fly the aircraft in that case, because
Sure.
learning to fly an aircraft means you have to practice certain maneuvers. That is something we want to put into something outside of the actual release, basically a
Okay.
campaign. When this will happen, this campaign, training campaign, I don't know. At the moment, yeah, the Kiowa will have on its release, very likely, but I have to check with DCS, with ED, double check certain FARP objects, maybe something on top that we have envisioned. Depends how much time I have at the moment till release, if I can squeeze this in, and what's going on in terms of the Q&A, how fast that will be. I mean, let's face it, the Q&A of Bell can be 1 week or it can be 2 months. We don't know yet.
Right.
So that then gives me a frame. What can we do in that time? Can we add something very specific in terms of FARPs and on top? I have to see. And I've talked to ED about something already. And yeah, so we'll see if that's possible. But in
Okay.
general, yeah, the FARP objects should be there. We've talked about it if we want to make that accessible only in campaigns, or if we want to make this accessible in general for the community. And we said no, okay, let's make it generally usable for mission designers and mission users, because it's just some 3D asset that will give you more, um,
More
yeah,
immersion.
more, yeah, immersion in general. And you can create some cool stuff with it visually,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily used as a FARP. What I do like though is, and that's something, it seems like that ED actually has made a good move there, that you
Yeah.
can go forward and use an invisible FARP,
Yeah.
and that's pretty cool. Uh,
Yeah, I think they
just
did that because I released a video about it. I'm sure I influenced that. Not at all.
could be.
Yeah, no, that's a good move. I mean, as a long time coming, and I think that lends itself to. I hope maybe I'm just spitballing here, but Edie kind of recognizing like, hey, the helicopter side of things needs a little love, and a quality FARP is definitely something in the right direction on that. All right, so the hype train's been going for the Kiowa for quite a while. So I think most people who have been kind of involved in DCS understand what's coming. But for those that don't, or maybe they're kind of new to everything, why should people be excited about the Kiowa? Like, what should we be looking forward to? What is like the number one thing that it is going to be a draw for people?
So the number one thing I think is the operational procedures you can establish between you and another player on the DCS ecosystem, which
Mhm.
means you can actually interact as a helicopter with strike packages. You can do a lot of the FAC or FAC stuff in this aircraft, actually everything of it. And I think this operational procedure between, let's say, an F-18, F-16, or another helicopter, Kiowa, or maybe if we talk about the Apache in two, three,
Yeah,
four, we don't know how many years it will take. But even then, you can have that interactability between you as a Kiowa operator
yeah,
and the rest of the gang that's flying around in that ecosystem. So
yeah,
that's probably the biggest part, I would say, because you can buddy lace and you can actually talk through the radios. Let's assume SRS or the internal channel. You can talk to the people. You can give them 9 lines, and you can do all the stuff that you actually would need to do as a FAC.
yeah.
And that's probably, in terms of the gaming, the most interesting part. Other than that, on top, it's a different new technology in terms of what we have created on our background in terms of flying. Um, I can personally feel the difference between all the other aircraft that are in DCS in terms of helicopter flying, but I don't want to make it like, yeah, it's the best or it's the worst or this
Right.
and here. I'm not going to put an opinion out there. I can only say it's different.
Yeah.
Um, in a positive way, and I know what's going into the whole process of the flight model. With you guys, what you refer to, what kind of, I would say, nitpicking that's happening here and there, which is good.
Yeah.
And then on top, the whole system, yeah, it's maybe a little weak in terms of the weapon systems, that it doesn't carry like a 10
Yeah.
shitload of weapons or like an Apache effect with 16 Hellfires. But does it need it? I think no. When you take into consideration that such a battlefield is very complicated sometimes, and you need
Yeah.
time actually to know where the guys are, and you have not created the mission, um, you still have the guys on the top, as I said a few seconds ago, and you can call them and be like, "Hey guys, I found something here. I'm out of whatever missile, like in terms of Hellfire or
Yeah.
APKWS. I need a bomb here and there. Laser code is what is your laser code in the bomb? Cool. Set your laser code on the system to the laser code of the bomb. Hit the laser, let it fly, and you can do the job as you want to, and you can achieve it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a ton of fun in the multiplayer. I agree with you. I think that's the number one. But you're spot on that. The ideal uh, Kiowa employment in the environment that DCS typically creates, which is not a counterinsurgency at all, but you're dealing with a lot of high threat capabilities out there. Is just like you said. We only really carry ammo for self protection. So I'm kind of picturing two Kiowas. One guy's got rockets and 50. One guy's got rockets and Hellfire. And they're just scouting. The only reason they got those guns is to protect themselves. And let's say, okay, they find a group of tanks and it's got a Shilka. Okay, well, they can call, an A-10 or something. They can use that one missile to get rid of the Shilka and then just direct the A-10s on those tanks. And so that's the kind of employment that I agree I'm excited about as a multiplayer. I guess we'll see how things work out from the single player side, particularly with some campaigns. But okay, let's see. Well, I guess the last question I want to ask you is, and you kind of hinted at it, and I'm sure you won't tell me, but I'm going to ask anyway. What's next for Polychop? Like beyond the Kiowa, what else are we looking at? Anything?
Well, um, to be honest, it's a little too early to really say anything.
Mm,
And I think what I learned from the past is as well, keep it as long as possible out of public, because even if
mm,
you post a screenshot of some 3D work on Facebook, that was something that happened to us. I posted some 3D work on the Kiowa because there were great shots. I rented them for one of the SMEs, and he was like, "Hey, can you give me something? I want to have something from a desktop from the 3D model because it looks exactly what it has to look like." And I was like, "Okay, cool."
right.
And I was like, "Okay, let's put it on Facebook. It's kind of cool. It's just 3D work. It doesn't say anything, and we have not stated anything to it." And suddenly the hype train started. And I was like, "Okay, that was not a good idea to do so." I see that, and
Yeah.
then suddenly, like something was going on. That Matt Wagner posted, they don't have a license, they don't have anything, and da 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 da. I was like, okay, people can see the background, what's going on in the background here and there, and people were starting to put out assumptions, and so that's what I learned. Don't post anything or say anything in particular of something that's planned or that's
Yeah.
actually happening on our side. If it's not yet everything into dry bags in terms of contracts with ED or the manufacturer. What I can say though is I am talking to Bell, Lockheed Martin, and in Lockheed Martin process Sikorsky at the same time. So, we get some proposals from either both of them. What we can do or what they would support us with. That's pretty much all I want to say. The list of
Sure.
helicopters that are out there. There's one helicopter that's definitely off from the scope of our list. That's the Longbow, as we
Yeah.
know now from
Yeah.
yesterday. That one is off the scope, so it can be anything that you can envision, basically, that is already out there. Maybe even something that was just a prototype. Who knows? I mean, there
Mm.
is an idea I fancy around with, but I don't know yet if it's possible or not. If it's possible, cool. And yeah, we talked inside of the team about it already, and
So
it's
Polychop confirmed Cheyenne 2022 is what I'm hearing.
oh,
So
Cheyenne. Wait a minute. That was the old one with the push propeller, right? That
yeah,
from
yeah,
the
yeah. That's
70s.
prototype. You said prototype, so that's it.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that one.
confirmed.
Wasn't that like the prototype before the Apache prototype, where they were trying to
It
figure?
was. It was. So yeah, a little bit of history, and I'll probably screw it up a little bit, but basically, the Army and the Air Force split, had a nasty divorce, and the Army was allowed to have helicopters. The Army started to arm helicopters, and started to arm the airplanes they were allowed to have, and Big Brother came down and says, "Okay, look, Army, you're getting a little ahead of yourself. You can't arm these airplanes the way you've been doing it, but you can do whatever you want to your helicopters." Well, when the Air Force kind of tried to pull itself out of the close air support business, because not a pound for ground, um, they the Army said, okay, well, we got to come up with our own thing. So they started to come up with the Cheyenne, which was very strange aircraft, and that sort of prompted the Air Force to say, oh, wait a minute, these guys are serious, and they kind of saw the dollar bills flowing towards that process. And so that's what the Air Force, one of the reasons that they kind of got into the A-10 business, was kind of grab onto some of those dollar bills. So the Cheyenne, I credit the Cheyenne with the development of the A-10, and then of course, yeah, some precursor, I guess you could say, to the Apache as well. So,
Ah,
but
okay,
yeah,
so
that would be an
chasing the dollar
interesting.
bills.
And I think I'm pretty sure that the front seat of the Cheyenne moved like that movie, The Last Starfighter, like it actually spun in place.
Oh
So
yeah, I remember I read something about that. That was kind of a
yeah,
strange idea, and I was like, okay, so where do I put my legs? Wow,
that makes me airsick just thinking about it. So I'm glad that they got rid of that idea. But
can you imagine looking like turning your body 90 degrees to
oh,
the right, maybe falling or having a moving gun, and then your pilot
yeah,
suddenly does a evasive maneuver, and you look into the grass, and like you're 10
right.
feet off the ground, and it's like, dude,
Yep.
this is roller coaster.
So we used to do that to new guys in Kiowas. We would be flying around, and you tell the new guy in the left seat, say, hey, look down at the skid. Like, I need you to look down. Like, I think there's something. Just come up with some reason to make him like kind of lean out the door and look down, and then do a hard left turn, and it will make you feel like you're upside down. So yeah. But yeah, I agree with you. That would be very disorienting. All right.
So
Well, yeah, I appreciate you keeping your cards close to your chest, because I think that's the right move. Because the problem with the hype train is once it gets going, it doesn't stop, and you don't want to culminate too early, because then again, COVID and things like this happen. They do slow the process down,
yeah.
as you guys have also discovered. So. No, I appreciate that you guys are trying to keep a lid on certain things, and I'm sure the community appreciates your focus on getting the Kiowa right. There's a ton of people that are excited about it. I was honestly surprised as I kind of got into the community the way that I am now, and realizing how many people were excited about it. Because again, as a Kiowa guy growing up, nobody knew what we
Yeah.
did. You'd always have to describe to people what the helicopter looked like, and they were like, "Oh, you guys fly little birds." Like, no, it's not a little bird; it's something different. So the idea that there's people out there that actually know, what the Kiowa is, as a Kiowa community member, I appreciate that Polychop has taken this on. So we wish you the best of luck, and I'm glad that I can help you out the little bit that I do. And for all you listeners, just do understand that this stuff is hard and it takes a lot of work, but I think the intentions are definitely in the right place all around, and I think it's gonna be worth waiting for. Cool.
Yeah. Thanks for having me here, Brian. And so we talk then after Christmas again, when we're back into testing with you guys.
Yeah, that sounds great, man. I appreciate you coming on.
You're welcome.